I look at myself as the starting point of something that can grow and be bigger. I've also watched people operate from a place of fear and not be able to meet their own needs ever because they're always operating from a place of fear.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the FYI podcast, where we find our inspiration and we follow it. Today, we're in Chicago. I'm super excited. I'm here with a special guest, Miranda Gonzalez. Miranda is an activist, a theater maker, an actress, a writer, a producer. She's also the artistic director of Urban Theater Company, a company that does incredible work here in Chicago. So, Miranda, it is a pleasure to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Paul.
Thanks for coming on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So let's get into the important stuff. Okay. Let's talk about you and your journey. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, all that stuff.
Where am I from? That is a question that I have been asked so many times in my life, and every time I feel like it changes just because, everywhere, right? I'm born and raised in Chicago. I'm a Chicago native. I am improper, okay? Like Chicago proper. Like a lot of people, I'll go out to LA and they'll say things like, oh, I'm from Chicago. And I'm like, what part? They're like, Naperville. I'm like, that's 45 minutes outside of the city. That's not Chicago. And I get into it a lot with some folks. And they'll be like, well, what else am I supposed to say? I'm like, say you're 45 minutes outside of Chicago.
Suburban.
Yes, exactly. So I was born and raised in Chicago. My family is Mexican on my mom's side. We're from Monterrey, Nuevo León. I speak fluent Spanish because I would go there every summer since I was a kid with my grandparents, and I would spend 3 months there. So I always tell folks both sides raised me, and on my dad's side, I'm African-American, and my grandparents migrated from the Great Migration that happened in the South and came up to Chicago. And have been there and have been here ever since. So, that's pretty much where I'm from.
That's a beautiful mix. African-American, Mexican.
Blaxican.
Yeah, Blaxican. So that would be Afro Latina.
Sure. I don't say that anymore because a lot of people have embraced that, which I'm proud of. You know, a lot of folks will be like, oh, well, I have Afro descendants, like African descendants, and I am from Venezuela or I am from Ecuador or whatever the case is, which is great. But a lot of them they're thinking about their descendants and not like their lived experience.
Correct.
So I just say that I'm Black Tina.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true because what do I know? I'm Italian, Irish, but yeah, it's like some culture be like. I'm Afro-Latina, but it's like their ancestors might have come from. But you're directly. Or
they'll be like, my dad's Black, and I'll be like, but you look not Black, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I don't say that anymore. Not that it's just for me personally, because when I think about being in spaces or in rooms and people are like, oh, I want an Afro-Latina, I want to make sure that they understand that they're getting a Black person who's going to show up.
Right.
And who has lived a Black experience. Not that I'm saying I don't know how to frame it exactly.
No, but I know what you mean. Yeah. I know what you mean, especially in casting. In Hollywood, there's a big push now for Afro-Latina. I see on the call sheet and, on the casting calls. But what you're saying is like...
Does that mean just curly hair? Like,
right. You're saying, no, I have the experience. I am African-American and Mexican. I'm experiencing both cultures, which are totally different. Let's be honest, and just I have Caribbean in my blood.
Yes, exactly.
I don't want to be like blasted on. I don't know. I'm just saying. I think I understand what you're saying because I don't want people out there to be. Who are you to say it's a different experience?
Absolutely. No,
Italian.
Yes.
Irish.
Irish guy.
What do you know?
With a New York accent.
Yeah,
No.
what do you know about our experience? No, but some people get. So I'm not trying to say I identify with your experience. I'm just saying I understand what you're saying. There, Let me clear that up before a trigger alert.
Yeah, no, yes. So I thank you though for asking. That was really nice. You're like Afro Latina with a question mark, and I'm like Black Dina.
Blaxican.
Yes, Blaxican is my preferred. Yeah.
Okay, so you grew up in Chicago. What do you do? I want to kind of get into what led you to what you're doing. But right now, I know you have multiple hats. But what do you?
I usually tell people to Google me for real because I'm like, I don't know what to tell you. What you want me to be today? What you want me to be today? You want me to be an artistic director today? Okay, cool. You want me to be an educator, a facilitator, a strategist, whatever the cause.
We don't have to pinpoint one, but I mean, you have your hands in a lot of different, staying busy. But let's kind of talk about what's one of the main things you're focusing on.
So one of the main things I would say is I'm a writer, producer, and director.
Okay.
I currently right now am writing a play called Mascogos, which is about the Underground Railroad to Mexico and the Black Seminoles. And LATC, a Latino theater company in LA, commissioned me to write that work.
Wow.
And we just had our first VIP or whatever reading of the draft. So that's what I'm currently working on right now. And I'm also a producing artistic director for a theater company, so a lot of advocacy around policy, around funding, allocation, how it should look and be different. So I'm also an advocate. But a lot of it really, I think like if I had to pinpoint it, if I had to say, hey, Miranda, what do you do? I love creating community and I love being creative. Even if it's something like you're like, hey girl, what am I gonna do with my house? I don't know what to do. Right there, I'm like, all right, let's see, because I just love that, and I love connecting with people. Anything that has to deal with connection, like something like this, I'm down. Like I'm like, yeah, let's do it. I want to meet somebody new. I want to see what they do. I want to see what I learn.
Yeah, so. I'm glad that you said that because you reminded me that it is good to be around people and to meet new people and new cultures, and as long as we're all living in love and we're trying to understand and understand that not everything's easy, so we're going to have difference in opinions on politics and how things should work, but without dialogue and communication, we're just going to stay doing
divided
this.
And nothing will change and everything will stay the same and no one is transformed in any sort of way and no one is inspired. And I think, and don't get me wrong, like in my early activism and my early protests and all of that, I definitely was very angry, rightfully so. But I think I learned over the years how to really connect with myself at my core values and understand that if I really am about it, like if I'm really bowdy, I have to really learn to speak to the masses. Like I have to learn what it is to collaborate or come together or bring people together in a certain way in order for me to really impact the world.
Yeah.
When I walk through spaces and when I walk through different cities, I love to learn the culture of that city.
Right.
Like, for example, when I go to LA, I do not hear sirens. I don't hear sirens. I don't see police that often. I don't hear a lot of ambulances. And as soon as I land back in Chicago, like I could be in LA for 2 weeks, I'll come back to Chicago. As soon as I land, it's sirens, it's police, and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't realize how much that soundscape was normalized for me through the years, Right. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. I want to be clear. It's just really different. And I was having a conversation with a couple of my friends because I have friends who've moved to the West Coast, right? Marilyn. I have friends who moved to the East Coast. And one of the things that they've learned who were born and raised here is they're like, girl, I guess we're aggressive. And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, well, because I was getting upset at this person and I was like, and she's like, and I was getting in her face and my husband grabbed me and was like, we don't do that here. And I was like, I'm like, why? Well, girl, did you tell her? She got a note, And then I started realizing, I was like, oh gosh, we are very confrontational people. Like there's an air, those of us who are born and raised here, who have been through the school system here, that is like, we are ready and not afraid to be very direct and to be like, no, I'm going to do that. No, we'll be like, why is that person false flagging? Why is that person over here pretending they're from Chicago? Then like we're right away. We'll tell that person. And I had to learn to dial it back. It took me several years, but I had to learn to a decade. I had to learn to be like, Miranda, you can't get defensive all the time when somebody says something. Cause like right away, somebody says something. I'll be like, why? What do you mean?
Yeah.
What you trying to say? Say it to my face then. And it's like,
what do you think that's from? Do you think that's from just the upbringing or the surroundings that you grew up with?
I mean, I grew up in Logan Square and Humboldt Park, when Logan Square and Humboldt Park were not what they are today. They weren't as gentrified. Like Logan Square now is so gentrified. Back in the day, if you had a starter jacket, like you had to be ready for somebody to take that starter jacket from you. If you had certain Jordans or certain shoes. So walking home from school, taking the bus, public transportation, right? You had folks that would just come up to you, grab your stuff, and you're like, what the? So you had to be ready.
Yeah.
You had to be prepared, and you had to be okay with fighting for it back, Right. And there's also a possession that occurs, a possessiveness, because I just went to a panel recently for Congo Square Theater, and they had amazing people from Chicago on that panel, and talked about how we are now, according to the data, the most segregated city in the United States.
Wow.
And I thought we would compete with Boston, but they're like, no. With all the data, with the way that we're all structured, how do we support and help people? How do we show up for others? How do we connect with those folks so we can continue to transform people's lives? So we create a society that's great for my great-great-grandchildren, right. Or yours or whomever. And I really want to focus on what that solution looks like. What does that, and I do it through my art. I look at myself as the starting point of something that can grow and be bigger. And also just to have that inspirational, and I use transformation. I feel like people are like, that word's overused. Well, for me, but I really do want to be able to connect with you in a way that you leave thinking, you know what, I remember when Miranda said that, oh, that's crazy. And it's kind of like, I don't like an ethereal type of like spiritual feeling where somebody out there in the world understands you and has your back, as opposed to like encountering people to just use them to get ahead or to, it's like, I don't run like that. Yeah. I never have. I never will. For me, it's, I want authentic people in my life. I want people who share the same values I do, with reciprocity, creating community, being creative, being playful, and all of that. And let's connect on that. And wherever it takes us, it takes us.
What you're saying is so powerful, because I do sometimes ask myself, like you talked about how separated Chicago is and that you're the most segregated in the country, which is shocking to me. I would think somewhere else.
Me too. Yeah, I was really upset when I heard it.
That's
I was like,
interesting.
What? Yeah.
What is it? Because I think both sides of the aisle politically, both sides of the fence, there's so many different cultures, and there's so many different cultures that are doing different things in their communities. Mm-hmm. And we could argue all day who has the privilege, where they get the privilege, was it given to them? Because you can even argue that with each culture, whether it's Jewish, Polish, Italian. Everybody has come from a place, and then you have these newer issues. So sometimes it's a hard conversation, because I guess what I'm trying to get at is just some cultures are just different than each other, and some like to, I don't know if it's racism, some like to keep their cultures a certain way.
When I think about human needs and I think about how they want to be met, I try my best to really think about that when I'm encountering every person I meet. What is it that they're wanting in this moment? I feel out their energy. I feel out like how open are they? How guarded are they? And I don't take it personal,
Right.
because we all come with our own stuff. Like we walk into a room and everything that we've ever learned is in that room, from our parents, from whomever, from our environment, how we were socialized, all of that stuff. It comes in. And rather than ignore it and pretend like it doesn't exist, I prefer to lean into it.
Right.
It's like, that's right. You're this Italian guy.
Yeah.
And I am not. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
We're different.
And that's that.
Right. In culture, not in humanity. That's the important thing. Is in humanity, we are not different. And if you are, there's an issue. That goes for both cultures. When you get on a plane and the flight attendants are talking about safety and the masks come down, it's mandatory to put your mask on first before you save the person next to you. Think about that.
I do.
It don't matter if that's a baby. It doesn't matter if it's your mother. It doesn't matter if it's a stranger. You put your mask on first, because if you pass out, you're both going to die. It's very much like society. If you're walking around, in my opinion, trying to save everybody and thinking about your generational pool and my people and my community before making sure you're staying away from crime, you're educating yourself, you're putting food on your table, you can't change anything.
I think it's our own individual responsibility to know our own stuff. Don't come at me or project onto me your stuff.
Right.
Please do it in an empty space. Please become aware. First, take care of yourself, understand yourself, know what your needs are, know what you need. And then you're able to help me, right? Like you're able to help, you're able to serve, you're able to, if you can, if that's your choice, if all of that good stuff. And I think that that's the part for me that keeps me going as a creative artist, as an activist, as an advocate, as a theater maker, as a consultant, as a mom, as a, like all of those things. It's how I have to make sure that when I am entering a room, I stand for something. Mm-hmm. You know that phrase? You don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything.
Sure.
So, and I have watched it happen. I've also watched people operate from a place of fear and not be able to meet their own needs ever, because they're always operating from a place of fear. I've also watched people operate from a place of anger and put whatever relationship it is that harmed them, hurt them, or whatever type of trauma they went through in front of them. So the fear of wanting to be, of not wanting to be alone, they end up being alone. Because you end up manifesting those fears and you end up actually projecting onto them. And there's a tons of psychological or psychologists that have data, because I love data. I love me some data. Whenever anybody's like, well, that's wrong, I'm like, where's the data?
Statistically.
Somebody needs to show me the data. Which people are always surprised by, because I am a creative. And they're like, really? I'm like, I'm not going to get
creative with it, with more of a brain, not just a creative brain.
I'm like, no, I need to know these things. I can't go out here, be out here in the streets talking about this and or giving opinions without them statistically being backed up. But I think that I really wish that there was a way for people to educate themselves on themselves. How is it that I show up? I remember I did this. I do a lot of individual professional development, or individual development in general, just because I want to be a better person, because that's my goal, right? And there's people who walk around this earth who don't. When I started off as an actress, I wanted to be famous, right? Everybody wants to be famous. I was like, I'm going to make it, and I'm going to move to LA and I'm going to do all these things. But I wasn't inspired. I didn't care. I didn't care enough about it. It wasn't a motivating factor for me to continue my life wanting to just be famous. And I started educating myself on myself. Well, what do you want, Miranda? Well, I want people to be happy. Well, what makes you happy? What does that look like? I started asking myself questions. I started really asking myself, what do you believe in? Really? Not the surface stuff that we see all over, that we get caught up in, that we start arguing about, that we get divisive about. It's like, no, what do you want? What makes you happy? What makes you passionate? What gives you inspiration? What motivates you? And for me, it really is connection with other people. And I started aligning myself to things like that. So I moved from being an actor to wanting to be a producer, to wanting to direct. I truly love human beings, like I said. So I do want to support and move you to where you need to go or guide you to where you need to go. But that doesn't mean I have to be fully invested. Like that doesn't mean that we have to make work together.
Right. That's one of the things, the issues I have with like censoring art or putting any kind of restrictions on art is I love to collaborate with people. We can't get anywhere. Somebody might have a vision of what it is that for example, I'm a spiritual guy. So if you watch any of the films that I've written and directed, no matter how gritty and, the content is, some is violent, some is dealing with drugs and addiction and dysfunction, but there's always a God element. And I've gotten jobs because of that, because people are like, no, I want you to, this film I just directed, it was a short film we shot in Mexico. That was why the writer wanted me. I was like, listen, I don't speak Spanish. I don't think I would serve your film right. And I thought maybe you should, let me introduce you some Latina female directors that I know that are doing great things. And she just refused. And the script was all in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. Listen, I don't think I'm the right person to direct your script. I just don't know how I would relate to it. And then after like 5 meetings, it was the feature film I just directed and wrote, Replica, that she had watched and said, listen, the way you were able to tie in, your Catholicism into this world of violence and drugs, and it was incredible, and I said, okay, let me read your script again. So she wrote it in English for me. It adapted it to, so it was like Spanish, and then right under would be all English, each paragraph. Then I was able to identify, and I agreed to do it. My point is, and it was a great experience. It did great. It just got into an Oscar-nominated, Oscar
Look at you.
qualifying
What?
festival.
I'm next to. I didn't even know who you were. Hi.
Yeah, no,
Oscar nominated.
No, I'm not Oscar nominated, but the film got an Oscar qualifying festival. And so it was an incredible experience. I went down to Mexico and shot it and got to learn a lot about the culture. I was making pan dulce at a bakery and just learning. And the whole team was Latino. And so we had like dialect coach. It was really cool. And it was, I guess what I'm trying to get at, if she had stuck to what's happening today in the industry, the narrative, this is what I'm trying to say. If she had said, listen, this is a heterosexual white male who does not identify with my culture or what my people are going through, and I'm going to give this job to an underprivileged director who might be a woman of color, I wouldn't have got that job. But she saw through that and said, no, this is an independent filmmaker as well. I have no studios financed. There is no privilege in the sense of how I get work. Even though I turned it down 5 times, she still was adamant to say, look, man, you're the right person for this job. I doubted myself. And guess what? Boom, we get into an Oscar qualifying festival.
But I think that give yourself some credit, right? Like you stood in a certain belief where you were like, look, I don't think I'm the person, but she connected with you on a shared vision,
yes.
And she felt that you could tell her story through an artistic channel that made the most sense of that story, you know? Mm-hmm. And I get that. We run a BIPOC founded, led by and for organization. That does not mean that we don't have people who don't identify as that. Absolutely not. It is more so about how do we have those core values that align together that also elevate marginalized folks. It's not like that for me is the latter part. Mm-hmm. The first part of it is really making sure that we're going to jive together, that you are expressing the values that we share. So that way the artistic vision can get elevated to where it needs to get to. Because at the end of the day, is this about me or is this about who this is going to affect and impact?
Right.
Because, and you can always tell the difference in arts. Yeah. I'm sorry. I know when I go to something and I don't feel inspired and I'm like, this person did this for themselves.
Right.
There's theater out there, there's film out there that I'm like, who gave this person this money? Like, this is somebody's son. You know what I mean? Because it was like, I really want to do this film. And then they do the film, and then you're like, I didn't feel anything. I didn't feel affected by it in any sort of way. It didn't rise up any emotion in me. It didn't do any of that. When we go to see or when we go to connect with art, that's what we're doing. We're connecting with art.
Yeah.
And you can tell. And when somebody writes something that is for a collective as opposed to an individualistic motivation or motivator, you can tell the difference.
Right.
You can tell the difference. And that's more work that I want to do. I don't want to do it just for me.
Yeah.
You know, why?
Right.
Why am I going to do it just for me and me by my little lonesome? I'd be so lonely. I'm like, no, I want to do it, you know, I want to do it for the filmmakers that I'm with, for the DP that's there that has always wanted to be something great, you know, who maybe hasn't had a chance in rooms before. But that doesn't mean that I don't have the ability to discern who should be in a group. And that doesn't mean that I don't have the ability to really prioritize certain things, you know?
Right. Yeah.
So I was hearing you talk about that, and I appreciate, you know, as a Mexican person, that you were like, yo, I don't know, you know, I mean, I might not be your person. And the person was like, no, you're the person. Yeah. You're like, all right, I'm the person. You know, I appreciate that, because there are folks who don't do that.
Yeah.
And they aren't good for it. Then you're like, this person just want to get up there.
Right.
You know, because everything is nuanced, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like there are days where I just want to live on an island and just do the things I want to do and not worry about anybody else, and just throw my phone in the ocean. But then I'm like, well, how long is that going to last? I think that just means I need a break. You know what I mean? Just because I do get, I don't know, I want to leave a legacy.
Yeah.
You know, like I do. I want to leave a legacy. Not for me, because it's not going to matter once I'm gone, but just for my family name, like for society to be like, you know what, this actually steered us in a direction, like this particular art or this way of thinking about art really changed the whole game for everybody. Or this process, like a lot of mine is around process. It's like this process made me feel loved, uplifted, and amplified. And it's because of one person that decided to do that, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really why I do what I do. Like, I
love that.
Why do I keep going? Why? Because I'm broke. You know what I mean? Like, it's the arts. We do not make money.
Right.
Sometimes I tell people, as an artistic director, if I have actors that, and I get it, they're individual artists, they're trying to make a living, they're trying to do what they need to do to get work. I understand entirely. And sometimes there's inflexibility, you know, within them on a lot of fronts, you know, and I'm like, do you think, like, I'm doing this for you? Like, I'm over here talking to all of these people so you get elevated for you.
Right.
And you're going to fight me on this one little thing. I don't want that, you know, or whatever the case is, or be a diva or throw a tantrum for 5 minutes of somebody like pulling me out of a room. You know what I'm saying? Like, I really think about how much I as a person have sacrificed for my own self and my own career, because I'm a writer. Like, I'm a writer-director. I've been writing for so long, and if I were to just pursue my own talents or my own way of life, I know for a fact that I wouldn't be living in my truth, if that makes sense, because I just don't function that way, me personally.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't function that way.
One thing that's very important is to, as an artist myself, I feel like, so I'm kind of the opposite, but not in a good or bad way. I do it for myself. Mm-hmm. I'll say it to the camera, I do my art for myself. I mean that. And what I mean by that is, this is not a selfish meaning. I've been doing this so long, and if I listen to the bad reviews, if I listen to the good reviews, I got to listen to the bad ones. This industry will beat you up. And when you do work and you create work, it's so subjective. So many people will hate what you do, think it wasn't good. Some will like it. My point is, you never know what's good until it goes out. As far as the public, all that should matter in my art is what it does to me. And I just finished a feature film starring Mickey Rourke. It's my first film I wrote and directed called Replica. And I have an incredible cast of actors that I've been fans of from the 90s all the way up till now. Making this film and writing it was a therapeutic experience for me. I put a lot of my life into it, a lot of my family, a lot of the things that mattered to me. And it was such a journey, and I don't regret any of it. This is my life to live. This is your life. You get one. Focus on everything that makes you a better person. In change, you will inspire and evoke thought in other people. And of course, I'm here to be a lending hand in any chance I can. But if I'm not getting mine, I have nothing to give.
That's why you got to put your mask on first, right? Like you
That's right.
literally just said
Yes.
what I was saying, which is like, you've got to be grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think what I'm trying to say is that as I'm just trying to be happy.
Yeah.
Everybody's trying to be happy.
Yeah, for sure.
And
For sure.
I've been down in the dumps and have battled a lot of traumatic experiences and gone through many depressions, and through my own self-discovery have learned, one, I don't care what people think about my work.
Right.
That's different.
Right.
I don't care. I don't do it
Right.
for people's opinions. I do it because I feel that the work and what I stand for and what my core values are actually like vibrate through people. Like
Right.
I'm talking about, I'm a very spiritual person. I'm like, wow, this came out real spiritual. Usually I'm really funny and do a lot of jokes. And I'm like, now I'm like, no, but I need to be elevated in a way that is ethereal, that is not of this world. You know what I'm saying? Because that's how I connect to things, and that's what makes me happy.
Yes.
I can't be like this materialistic person. Will money come? I'm positive of it.
Sure.
You know, will I get into rooms like this with you based off of like I didn't know who you were before Marilyn texted me, and I just trust her because that's one of my people. Like she is my person. Like the way we move through life is real. We are Chicago natives. We come in here, and she's a part of my tribe.
Yeah.
And I trust my tribe, and my tribe will put me in rooms like this.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah.
But I'm not like, who's out there? Who's going to invite me? And who, was that? Oh, Paul Tully, Paul. You know what? I'm not doing that.
Right.
No, I'm walking my truth. It's lonely out there. Like, and I think I'm coming from a place because where I'm at in my age and in my life cycle, there are a lot of people who are passing away, from cancer.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
Suicide.
Family, friends, yes.
And they're young.
Right.
And I'm like, what is it? And I forgot who said this quote, but what is it that I want to do with this wondrous and beautiful life? Like, what is it that I want to do? Because it's short.
Yes.
And we don't leave with all of the money, and we don't leave with the fame, and we don't leave with any of that. But if I could die a happy person knowing that I at least inspired people to be better, people to connect more, people to lead with love, I'll die happy.
Absolutely. It's interesting. I have a friend. He's a little older than me. He's a very established writer in the industry, so his career, is there. I remember one day we were having dinner after a play that he came to see of ours, and we went out to dinner, and I was talking about my film Replica. This before it was made. This before I had financing or anything. I had the screenplay. And I was like, man, if I get Replica made, I was at the table, man, I could die a happy man. And I remember he said, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard, bro. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, you die a happy man if your film gets made? I said, yeah, because I know that my legacy is solidified. And a lot of my family legacy that's in that movie, I know I'll inspire people. He said, that's all great stuff. He's like, you die a happy man because of that? I said, yeah. And he goes, bro, be happy alive. Stop thinking about when you die. I go, that's easy for you to say. You're already established, bro. You make money. You've written stuff. Your legacy's here. Your plays have been done at the public theater. You've done this. And he said, oh, man, Paulie, you're way off. That's not what I care about, that my plays have been done at the public or that big A-list actors have done my work. He said, bro, do your art for you. Your job is not to think about what people think about or how you move people. Don't worry about that you evoked thought in people. Evoke thought in yourself. This life is yours. And through that, if people are affected and inspired and great, that's a good thing, but do not even think of that in your work. And I said, Now, if I went home that night, I'm like, he's bugging. If my movie gets made, now my movie's made. We got the distribution deals on the table.
What's next?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
when I
wait
tell
a minute.
you I've done enough personal development work, I remember sitting there and one of the life coaches being like, and then what?
Right.
And then what?
And then what's next? When is
and
enough
when is
enough?
enough?
Right.
Which is why I'm like, you got to know what you stand for. You got to know why you're in the room. You got to know yourself. You got to know how you show up. You got to put your mask on first. You know what I'm saying? Like you got to know those things because I don't know what it is. Like I honestly just got to say, I don't know what it is, but that just makes me happy.
Yeah.
You know? And I love making people laugh, and I love connecting, and I love being a mom, and I love watching my kids. Like, we have fun. My kids and I have so much fun.
I want to talk a little bit about just you and the excellence of you. And I want to acknowledge from what you're a mother, you run a theater company, you provide pathways for artists to get their work seen and done. And I want to just say to the camera, that's no small feat. Being an artistic director of a theater company is being a CEO of a company. And, meaning not a CEO like we see in the news that are making hundreds of millions and not paying their people. With theater, we do not make money. So you're doing all the work of a CEO without money. And from what I heard from you, your pay and reward, truly, not in a cheesy way, is to see people authentically be able to create their work and shine through their work. You're putting a community on stage and writing for a community that's thirsty for the work, maybe, where the general public maybe is like, I'm not sitting in a play.
That's a good observation. I'm also the founding member of Teatro Luna, which was Chicago's only all Latina theater company. They're now out west. They're in LA. They're Teatro Luna West and Studio Luna. But the work that I've always done has been so that way, has been for my people.
Yeah. Right.
It always has been. And I really thank you, first of all, for saying all of that, because it is hard out here in these streets.
It's hard. I love your energy. I love the message. I want to thank you for taking your time out of your day to come on and just share your story with us. It's been incredible.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. Talk to me in 5 years. Everything might change. No, I'm just kidding.
No. Well, hopefully we're both rich and successful and we're helping the world. All right, guys, I want to close this out with another episode of FYI. This Finding Your Inspiration, where we find it and we follow it. Miranda talked about being a mother. She talked about being an artistic director. She talked about being a businesswoman. What this woman is shared with me today and what I took out of it is that you could wear many hats. But most importantly, what she said that hit me today was she's a fan of people and she wants to connect with people. And that's what moves her and that's what gets her going. No matter where we're from, what cultures we are, what social economical levels we're at, what matters is that I have the love that the next person has. I think everything else will work itself out. Stay hustling, take care of yourself, take care of the people around you. Most importantly, take care of each other. It's the FYI podcast, where we find our inspiration and we follow it. See you on the next one. This is Paul Tully with the FYI podcast. Season 1 was truly transformative. Changed my life. Check out Season 2. Just might change yours.
You should never stress about the problems you be facing. Everybody in the mud on the struggle trying to make it. Look into the mirror and you see the motivation. Then you step into the world and you find your inspiration. I'm finding inspiration, and once I get a hold of it, I'll never get complacent. Look into the mirror and you see the motivation. Then you step into the world and you find your inspiration.